being at that right place at the right time is the most important thing. So you need to always have faith in yourself. You need to, always have good intentions, whether you succeed, whether you fail, but always try to, kind of help each other, have more like a collaborative approach. I think it's a very basic things. That's the most important advice I would say. That's the most important do. If this is good, I think your relationships are good, your intentions are good, you would eventually kind of, succeed somewhere or the other in your complete life, is what my personal opinion has been. And I've been like spiritual in, a lot of ways. This is one. The other do's is, which is most important thing, is that I would say that have a right support system. I mean, whenever you're starting up, you need to at least make sure that you have this runway or this much amount of resources or financing with you, where you could at least survive or meet your basic expenses for a year at least. Because see, eventually the journey gets very difficult. Like no startup is actually born in like 3 months, 4 months, and they actually scale, right? You need some time to build it up. You need some time to think through. There are a lot of times, like I would say, honestly, you would even also like procrastinate. Like you would be like, "Ki main kya kar raha hu?" You would go into a lot of deep thinking, and you would figure out eventually answers to so many stuff which actually happens. So you need to give a lot of time to yourself. Hear your inner voice, that what exactly you want to do. Have that complete visualization of eventually where you will be in like 3 years, 5 years, right? You need to have vision of that professor in that money heist, right? And that's how you would be eventually be successful. You need to know every move, everything. You have to plan it very properly, and importantly, you need to have confidence at yourself. That is.
Hello, my icebugs. Welcome to the Icebug Show with Saurabh Puranik. Here, we share character enriching and entrepreneurial content by uncovering the minds of successful people. So, please make sure to subscribe us and share these videos with your friends and family and become a part of their growth story. I request you to note down the learnings of this video in your diary or in the comment box. So, let's grow together. Our today's guest is Prashant Surana Jain. He is a serial entrepreneur in artificial intelligence and blockchain. He is the co-founder of Snapper Future Tech, India's most awarded blockchain company. He is recognized as the #1 super achiever under 30 by Hindustan Times. Recently, he featured in Forbes India Icons of Excellence 2021 and gave him the title of Bitcoin Man India. In this episode, we talked about his iceberg story, his passion for blockchain technology, the importance of personal finance, market research, and networking for startups. So, enjoy this episode and comment your learnings. Let's grow together. Hello, Prashant sir. Thank you for accepting my invite, and I welcome you on the Icebug Show with Saurabh Puranik.
Yeah, thank you so much, Saurabh, for having me here. I think the show has like a really wonderful title, the Iceberg Show, to kind of discover that what's actually on the inside rather than outside. So thank you so much for having me here, Saurabh. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's open this episode with my signature question. That is, what is your iceberg story? Because you recently featured on Forbes India magazine, and I would like to know about what is your entrepreneurial journey and what foundation you built to achieve such recognition.
Actually, to be very honest, right, like I really wanted to be an entrepreneur since I was a child. Maybe when I was in like fifth or sixth standard, probably, right. And this all actually, started because I come from a traditional business family, right. I have seen my grandfather and my dad building their own foundations right from the scratch. So to me, I think that was, being in that environment of, entrepreneurs and businessmen, I think had some impact in my mind that, okay, I really wanted to be an entrepreneur, since my early ages, because what I realized that looking at my, father, my grandfather and everything, I think entrepreneurs are people who actually kind of, drive society forward. I think they take risk in a lot of ways, not only from their business perspective, but also, for creating value or, finding out right products or right services for the society or for the people, right? I think they drive, uh, you know, lot of things, from customers, right? Because when you talk about business, one of the most important thing, right, like, after B, business comes customers, which is C. So you would always, be focused about more about your customers, society, and what is the kind of problem which has to be kind of, solved. So that is where actually it all started. And then when I eventually moved to my, ninth or 10th standard respectively, when I was like 14, 15 years old, I was just actually kind of, traveling, right? And then when I was traveling, I'm really fond of like gadgets and, technology. Like, I got early access to iPhone 3G, maybe I believe back then. And that was to me like mind-boggling, right? Like you could touch, you could feel, you could do so many cool things around it. And that gave me a kick that, I think this is where the future lies. I think everything in your palms, power of internet. And I think that was a stepping stone for almost everyone today, all the entrepreneurs in this industry, when we talk about mobile applications, like, specifically, or services at your fingertips. So that was like really mind-boggling. And I was, kind of, wondering that you could potentially use your cameras and all of this for like a really really cool purpose. And I was also found, and one day I was actually traveling, and then I really saw one, cool Rolex watch in one of the passengers, wrist. And I was like really, really fascinated by that watch, like that, classiness, or that kind of like appealing on your wrist. Like, I mean, see, for a man, like the only thing which potentially would have as a jewelry was a watch. And I was fond of, all these certain things. So, but, when, I really didn't have any guts to, ask him around that, okay, what was watch that, or etc. etc. And then, we obviously left and traveled. And that fine day I was thinking that, okay, what, I have a phone, and I have like a camera, and what if I could just use it to take a picture of any of those things or products. I could just find it on the internet. It would actually save me from an embarrassment of asking someone its price, or from where did he purchase, etc. etc. And I think that was one of the problems which I came across personally, and decided to kind of solve. And of course I wanted to buy that, so I needed really a stepping stone. And then after I kind of came back, I gave it a thought through, and then I eventually decided that why not I start selling those on e-commerce, and create my own e-commerce platform. I think and that was where back then the opportunity was that, okay, like this fashion and all of this in Indian market was just seeming to grow, and there was not good luxury fashion portals where you could buy accessories, clothes, or any of those things. And that was also not much available in India, because India was then, I think very very backward when we talk about brands and fashion, not from that perspective, but from purchasing power perspective. So obviously you have limited access, but there were always that certain section of society which would always wanted to have those, or have those your hands on those exclusive products and things.
Mm.
So eventually I started to travel. We met a lot of these distributors who were actually selling these products, and ended up taking like a franchise or a license for selling a lot of brands online. And that's where my e-commerce journey started. I think I was in my 10th standard, up around 14 and a half, 15 years old, decided to sell those products online. And then when I started to sell online, right, I didn't realize this problem that, that trust plays a very important role on whatever product or services you actually sell.
Mm.
And getting that first 100 customers is like really, really important, because those are the people who would actually get you more clients, or, would spread good, message, or good feedbacks about your platform and your product, right? And also internet was very early, only very handful of people actually knew and had access to internet back then. So, marketing and reaching out them was always a challenge. So I ended up selling on, popular e-commerce platforms, gave my discount vouchers to my customers, and then slowly my sales started to increase. And then I had access to those first 100 customers. Maybe it took me like about 3 months to 6 months to actually build that. A lot of hustle, trying to figure out a lot of things, how to retain them, sending them gift vouchers, and then trying them to get to your e-commerce platform. And
Mm.
slowly I actually kind of happened to build that. And once I kind of happened to build that, obviously the business started to grow, started to scale. I had more inquiries, trying to manage my education, and also my work. And I always believe that it's also very important to keep your education. Like you just cannot kind of say that, okay, I don't want to be I just want to be a dropout or just focus completely on all these things, because education would always give you more exposure, would give you at least help you to develop your personality skills, or develop your thought process, which is actually required, rather than we talking about that what is taught in schools and colleges. So I think that kept me always going. I always performed well in my education, and also in my businesses. And also when business start to, grow, typically in a business family, you would also find a lot of friends, or even your like mom, dad, your brother, whoever would actually help you out, right? So whenever I used to be in, college or studying, like kind of my dad and, my dad's staff used to help me out with packaging, shipment, procuring, etc., and handling all those groundworks. So I slowly kind of scale that business, grew that business, and then eventually did like for 1.5 year, because goal was actually for me to back then buy a Rolex for myself, and then which I successfully ended up in just like 1 year of my business. And I think I was like that, what, like I have achieved something which I really wanted to kind of, because that was something like from where it all started. And then when I moved to my undergraduation in 2012, 2013, I met a bunch of exciting friends and, a lot of people in college and university. And I was still trying to, slowly, steadily growing this business up. And then actually, I think camera, internet, smartphone, a lot of things also had like a decent penetration. I think that was, I would say, a Paytm era, right? It was like Paytm and, shopping everywhere, and so
Yes.
and this concept of overall hyper local shopping started to, I think, emerge back then, right? Where you could order stuff from your nearby stores and it could actually get delivered.
Yes.
So we actually felt that, like, right, okay. So I personally started here. I knew that what customers would want. There was a lot of iPhones, Blackberries in the market. Mobile applications started to grow, and I think it was just taking off specifically from Indian context. And then we realized that why don't we start uh, like, and AI, and then okay. So during this, what actually happened was that I was just googling and trying to understand lots of things about image analytics, because we wanted to build a platform where customers could take picture of any of the product or service they like, and then we aggregate it, we do a price comparison for them, and we say them that, okay, this is what you could buy, this is what it is available on the internet. So we were actually solving a big problem for the shoppers back then, because you might like, let's say, Justin Bieber, right? And you want to know what kind of sneakers Justin Bieber is wearing, but you obviously don't want to Google every single time and stuff like that. So we created that kind of a platform where you could have a Justin Bieber's picture, and you could just select the shoes, scan it, and we could just tell you what price it is available on the internet. So we started with that platform, and then we started to grow. I think we had like about 3,000-4,000 first customers who were actually using our platform. And then once we started to grow, I think we stuck at a point where we needed a strong business model, or revenues in place to kind of scale that up, because and then when we started to do that, I actually trying to learn more about image analytics and stuff like that, and I came across about artificial intelligence. And then to me, reading about artificial intelligence and what stuff it could do, it was just like mind boggling. You could potentially create like a computer vision system with like where with like a god's eye, right? You just put a camera and you would know that who is what, and what not. Like, I think that vision, I just read one article on on some platform, I don't remember, but and that was mind boggling. The author, the way he was describing about artificial intelligence, he was actually connecting all of these sci-fi movies to that.
Okay.
Then we potentially kind of thought that, okay, what, we could actually build AI enabled kind of a shopping platform and be one of those players in this image analytics space, because we knew that cameras, smartphone, internet, and everything is going to go all like completely mobile. So we started to work on our application, and Snapper as a company, or my first startup, was born. We were like three college mates, same classmates, I would say, rather, and amazing, at what we do. So one guy was good at business, the other guy was good at architecting and stuff like that, and I was always good at the technology, kind of side of things. So we started to kind of pull together, bootstrap, invest into this, right? And obviously every startup would possibly start from a perspective that looking at Steve Jobs, or looking at Bill Gates, or looking at Peter Thiel, PayPal, like completely Silicon Valley inspired, right? And you would always feel that, okay, how Steve Jobs made Apple possible to grow in 5 years, it is all possible for us. But the real iceberg lies in the hustle which they have potentially did for like maybe 10 years,
Hmm.
15 years, or 5 years of their entire career, right? As they always say that it took 12 years for Bitcoin or crypto market to reach $1 trillion market cap. It took Apple 45 years to reach to $1 trillion market cap, Microsoft 42 years, and Amazon did it like in 20-25 years. But obviously, if you look at all these things were solving a huge a problem. And every single time the technology or the internet penetration also played a very important role for these companies to scale faster and faster and faster.
Hmm.
So those things, I think I somewhere got a sense of that. And we said that, okay, let's build a good technology, good product which is more accurate. So the first challenge was like, okay, you need to find some good resources and stuff like that, like to kind of build. And India, right, was, I would say, people in India, even today, they are very skeptical about trying new technologies or taking risk, with that. I think they would go
Yes.
with still with a very stable technology, or like even today, most of the businesses would still want to go with .NET or Java, rather than building themselves on Mean Stack, Merge Stack, or Python, or whatever not. So that has always been an issue, and then we struggled to find right developers or right team for us. But eventually ended up creating a team from like other places around the world through Upwork, freelance. We explained our idea,
Hmm.
uh, and then we built a product. The product went well. We Our goal was to acquire first 1,000 users, try to test it, and somewhere we were able to achieve like 70-80% accuracy on image analytics. And we knew that point in time that now product is ready. I think we have crossed our alpha beta, and it's time for us to potentially raise more capital and enter the market. So we actually started to went to a lot of these conferences, started to pitch to VCs, and we were talking about AI, right? So in 2013, person talking about AI was seen as mad, because no investor, actually, I would say hardly any Indian investor would know what AI actually is, apart from artificial intelligence and its business potential. And then when we started to pitch, they were like, "You guys are like, just crazy. यहाँ पे मतलब, in India there is a problem where people cannot even meet their basic expectations, but you want to do something which is extraordinary." And if you ask me that what is the potential of this platform we have built, I would have just go on till that Terminator story, right, where you have computer vision. And that was our goal with that. And then also similarly, what gave us more motivation, exciting, was that specifically in the China and the Hong Kong region, there was this company called SenseTime, I think, yeah, and now they are the largest image analytics unicorn in the world. So they were building this product parallelly in those markets. And actually now we had that comparison point that, okay, this is the company, and if this company can grow at that pace, maybe we can also grow. But eventually somewhere we failed to raise capital, because some people thought that we are too young, we're too crazy to talk about that, and we didn't have any good business model in place. But our infrastructure expenses and everything kept on increasing. And remember, it's a bootstrap startup, still we have no profits yet. And it was completely, we were funding it from our sources. So eventually what happened that, okay, now we decided that, okay, let's try to build a business model in place. And then hyperlocal e-commerce was, as I told you, just started to kick in. So what we did was that we actually went to local stores, tried to partner with them, created a complete hyperlocal e-commerce marketplace where any retailer could actually kind of sell their products or list their products online. Customers searching for similar products would get notification based on machine learning and AI, that, okay, this product is available at nearest retailer, so you can potentially go there and buy there. And then we launched this, started to grow the business, and then all of a sudden there was this cashback war, which was actually started by Paytm. I think every person would wanted to go to Paytm because of cashbacks. And that
Yes.
was actually insane. It made our business model actually killing, because of the fact that every retailer, wherever we go and try to partner up, they were like, why we should potentially use your platform, because Paytm to cashback data. And then And then what we did was that, okay, it was very important for us to do the same ecosystem. So we created a mobile wallet called QuickPay, a very good integrated product. Uh, was both on Android and iOS app. And, we had this image analytics, we had this, hyperlocal e-commerce platform. And also we have like a complete e-commerce marketplace. And also we have the wallet. So I think from product wise, it was just a killer a product. We launched the market, and one of the ways when we wanted to scale, I think what we decided was that we decided to go something, a personal approach. We knew our target market is Hyderabad because our base was from Hyderabad. So what we potentially did was that we actually hired some, representatives or our executives and placed them at every our partner stores. So they used to kind of, go there and used to say every customer that, okay, if you use QuickPay, right, which is our payments app, you would actually kind of, get additional discounts and cash back and immediately credit it to your wallet. And the way we actually decided to go or counter this cashback war was to establish a personal touch with the customers, right? I mean, I think that is a very, very important step which I realized in my entire journey, that having that personal touch plays a very, very important role. And once they start using your product, they would eventually become your repeat customers, and you don't even have to kind of give them more attention. You understand, like, they have faith in you, right? They wouldn't ping you customer support team every single time, or account managers, and would say that this is not working, that is not working. So we were successful enough in establishing that personal touch, grew our platform to put possibly 15-20,000 users in 6 to 9 months. We were serving around, I think, 30-40,000 users, had a very good GMVs in place, like completely blitz scale. And then that was a time where we were bleeding, because now we needed potential funding to actually kind of grow this, because we were bleeding. And now we know that like, we can scale the business. I think we proved that there was a decent business model in place, there's a decent technology in place. I think almost everything had like blue checks, but of course you would have certain imperfections, in a sense that, okay, like, maybe we all three were like not hardcore like techies or coders or things like that. So, but obviously that said, we had our strength, that we knew how to grow this market, how to penetrate into different market, and how to establish that personal touch with our customers. I think those processes were something which we were able to identify, because we scaled that business from 1,000 possible users to like 30, 40, 50,000 in like 6 months. And then fortunately what happened was that while we were trying to pitch, our idea got selected in Rise Hong Kong in like 2015 mid. And this is like one of the biggest startup event in whole of Asia. And that was my first time I actually moved, or I went to Hong Kong or China, and started to see what kind of a startup ecosystem there. And remember, I was talking about this company called TimeSense, right? SenseTime. And they were potentially based out of Hong Kong, and financials, I think, invested or were about to invest, but that company in image analytics just blew my mind from tech perspective. And fortunately, what happened was that we had a booth, we tried to pitch a lot of people and a lot of investors, and people actually started to show interest, traction, and like our confidence like actually grew in what we were trying to do. But obviously, when it comes about like signing term sheet or something like that, these guys are like potentially sharks. They just want to have more and more possibly of your equity. And back then we thought that there should be a decent valuation to our business, because the kind of sweat and everything which we actually went through in getting all of these things, I think that is valuable. And I feel that value is really, really important, because if people values you, they are actually very serious about you. But what happened was that we actually kind of got kind of in offer to kind of sell our business and stuff like that. And then we decided to actually eventually exit. Obviously we made some money and some multiples on that, because we were bleeding, right? And then a lot of investors were very actually skeptical. And for us, this complete ecosystem for me was, I would say, completely new, right? And then traditional business mind would possibly say that, okay, cab jo bhi ROI aa raha hai in your thing, then just take it and just like kind of keep explore other opportunities. So we decided to do that. But eventually what also happened was that, since we were bleeding, right, and it was very becoming difficult for other partners and other people and kind of all of us to kind of invest into the business and actually grow, because there was no profitability to be seen except the growth of users and everything. So eventually we decided to do what was right for best possible for all of us. But I think that so I think that complete trip was like mind changing for me, because I knew a lot about technology, a lot about this VC ecosystem, how it works. And I actually realized that, if you want to, go that big or something, I need to have some references and strong people in that ecosystem actually vouch for you and support you up. And that's where the power of networking is very important if you want to, do a startup. I would actually say if any entrepreneur wants to do something new, right from his ideation stage, I think they should start building their networking within those ecosystem, and trying to talk to people, investors, and customers, and everyone, like your complete stakeholders who are actually required. Maybe your suppliers, maybe your friends who are like you potentially think is an audience for your product or service, because that would actually give you a lot of these ideas or loopholes that what actually they think about it, rather than you build your product first and then you test it out. So this step would actually is very, very, kind of, important. And then I actually realized that, like, possibly if we would have, done like enough, market research, or possibly a survey that, like actually how many vendors or what kind of an ecosystem would be actually ready to accept it, I think you would have scaled much, much possibly faster. And we would have actually reduced a lot of our time in actually identifying the right customer set and how to reaching out to customers and everything, right? And this is this step I would possibly say is very important, and you need to have that networking in place, because once you start your entrepreneur's journey or enterprise journey, you need to actually build product or build anything in close connection with your customers or stakeholders, because once you eventually do that, that will actually kind of help you out in getting early users specifically super fast. So that was our learning. And then I came across this amazing thing called blockchain and crypto. I was just like like just swinged away by this, because the pitch was that if even there's a 1% chance of Bitcoin possibly changing how our money works, I think I really had that vibe, and I felt that like this is it. I think I have to be here. Like there's no way in the world where I should possibly kind of drop out from this. And meeting a lot of people over some poker games, some like some chilling stuff and stuff like that. And everyone, so this community was like a mad cult, and it's still today a mad cult. If you see a blockchain and crypto, I think they actually live what Bitcoin, crypto, everything. And as if they knew that how world's gonna behave and kind of react. They were like when crisis happened back then, government started to print money and world needs a deflationary asset. I'm like, come on man, you have gold. There are a lot of ways to actually kind of diversify, but again these guys actually knew what's going to happen. This is what has happened in kind of 2020, that okay, government's printing kind of more money, and then Bitcoin's all of a sudden kind of becoming a store of value, and world knows that okay, economically you need this deflationary asset and stuff like that. But back then there were only just few bunch of guys who actually saw that and went into this space kind of super early. And I thought that okay, maybe I should actually kind of not look this crypto stuff from money perspective, but also from tech perspective. Like the core blockchain was really exciting, because I felt that blockchain is a technology of trust. I think it's one of those fundamental kind of provide like this kind of a data infrastructure where it could connect today's internet. So right now if you look at the today's internet ecosystem, it completely works on like silos. Like for example, if two banks have to possibly transact, they would use a Swift, because Swift is like a bridge between them. But his biggest question is that Swift is like a trusted bridge. Are there any challenges? The answer is obviously yes, because it's not an open source ledger where things are like kind of encrypted and you control what data has to be shared, and etc etc. So I again did a lot of research on this blockchain as a technology, blockchain from complete infrastructure perspective, and I know that this is this internet is now going to evolve not only in place where we actually search information, but a place where we share and exchange value in the form of data. Everything today, whatever we move on the internet is all data. Like your money is data, right? Your banks, your digital apps is completely data. Like everything is data. And this would possibly, if you look at a lot of these enterprise use case perspective, like you have like this bills of like your export bill, import bill, trading bill, all of these monetary things, supply chain, so many things where you actually would store on internet, which is your data. It has to be kind of exchanged, and that has a lot of value. I knew that. Now I read a lot of use cases and stuff like that. I knew that blockchain could possibly change the way people exchange data.
Exactly.
It is actually help one and another to have that ownership over the data. It would give people the control over the power of their data, like let it be businesses, us, and we can decide with whom this data has to be shared. And the smart contracts thing was just like insane. I mean, you could possibly execute everything just based on our data. So it actually kind of gave that programming power to machines and to computers, that what are the parameters on how transaction or how flow should happen. But if you think of same thing from enterprise and from like business perspective, this is just like solving like another level of problem. Actually, it's solving about your biggest problem of asset transfer, which is like digitally, and that problem is like worth trillions and trillions of dollars today, right?
Okay.
So
Yes.
and then yeah.
But sir, can you please tell us about your belief that we are in a blockchain age, and how Indian entrepreneurs can take the advantage of that, and which sectors we need to target first to in order to get that full advantage of blockchain?
So yeah, so okay, so basically, right now, I would say that from blockchain technology perspective, we are still at a very early stages. The problem where you could actually, so wherever there is an issue of trust, you can think of implementing blockchain. For example, your banking transactions or even your receipts. Maybe just two of us have one contract that, okay, you know what, like, Saurabh gives me like, let's say $1 million. And then, every month I need to pay Saurabh some kind of an interest, right? Today, this function is done by banks, but tomorrow with smart contracts and blockchain, Saurabh can do this to me, and my assets or whatever the value is actually locked in the smart contracts, and that is actually get transferred to Saurabh automatically. So my dependency on escrows, middlemen is reduced to a lot of extent. So all of these problems, I think, extent is actually existing at every levels of our society, and I think you can implement blockchain in all those areas where there is issue of trust, where you feel that parties, participants, and everyone are like kind of working in silos, and you need that trusted bridge or that infrastructure to kind of connect these two dots, or when we talk about an ecosystem as such, like maybe automobile space, right, where a manufacturer gets complete parts from so many suppliers, warranty management there, contractual management there, import export there. I think there's a tremendous applications, and blockchain as an industry has just started. But still, again, there are other challenges on identifying the right blockchain infrastructure platform, uh, and then which infrastructure to use, how to use, because there are certain, again, scalability issues technically. I think it's a very complex technology when we talk about kind of implementing this at a ground level. So you need to
Okay.
do a good homework on how you kind of decide to use this tech, because when we talk about crypto assets and bitcoins in today's world, there's a lot of regulatory aspects towards it. But if you talk about specifically like blockchain, yes, I think the first step is that you identify the problem. Like, once you know or feel the problem, reach out to people who are actually in this business, maybe small, big, whatever network or access you have. Try to build some networking around it, understand what customers want, build a product, or build something, try to test it out, maybe do 50, 100 instances, or trial runs of your platform, and see how it's kind of working out. Get certain feedbacks, and I think that is a time when you could take a concrete decision that this is what I want to do, because there's a value, there's a business model, there is a customer, and I know that 1,000 possible customers exist who need this kind of a problem, or this kind of like product or a service.
Yes, yes. So, but as an entrepreneur, what are the do's and don'ts of starting a blockchain startup? What suggestions you will give to Indian
So
entrepreneurs?
so So I think in our journey, what happened was that I was also lucky, I would say, in a lot of ways, right? Like it's always say that you have to be at the right place, at the right
Mhm.
time.
Mhm.
So I think the first important thing I would say your karmas would matter a lot. That like you need to have that piece of luck because for me what happened was that when after I came to from Hong Kong to kind of India and started to work on the blockchain and everything, right, I actually got that access to networking where I was able to talk to these government guys and we knew that okay, if they want to talk about crazy tech, Prashant is the guy
Mhm.
to go to. And then finally what happened was that I got an opportunity to kind of work with government of Andhra Pradesh, help them build a lot of these use cases. They were establishing this fintech valley BISAC. I got a chance to work with the KPMG team, and that's where I got my access to my first customer and the problem statement to kind of work upon. I think the exposure was huge. We had the traction. We were all over kind of media, and we were actually I think one of the first companies to do like a real world implementation of or a pilot use case of blockchain, that to land records. But again the hierarchy and the bureaucracy is such that it like nobody would want to bring 100% transparency when we talk about land records because we understand the situations here, but that gives us like a stepping stone or a milestone to actually grow from here. So I think that matters a lot, like your karma or being at that right place at the right time is the most important thing. So you need to always have faith in yourself. You need to always have good intentions, whether you succeed, whether you fail, but always try to kind of help each other, have more like a collaborative approach. I think it's a very basic things. That's the most important advice I would say. That's the most important do. If this is good, I think your relationships are good, your intentions are good, you would eventually kind of succeed somewhere or the other in your complete life is what my personal opinion has been. And I've been like spiritual in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
This is one. The other do's is which is most important thing is that I would say that have a right support system. I mean, whenever you're starting up, you need to at least make sure that you have this runway or this much amount of resources or financing with you where you could at least survive or meet your basic expenses for a year at least. Because see, eventually the journey gets very difficult. Like no startup is actually born in like 3 months, 4 months, and they actually scale, right? You need some time to build it up. You need some time to think through. There are a lot of times, like I would say, honestly, you would even also like procrastinate. Like you would be like, "Ki main kya kar raha hu?" You would go into a lot of deep thinking, and you would figure out eventually answers to so many stuff which actually happens. So you need to give a lot of time to yourself. Hear your inner voice that what exactly you want to do. Have that complete visualization of eventually where you will be in like 3 years, 5 years, right? You need to have vision of that professor in that money heist, right? And that's how you would be eventually be successful. You need to know every move, everything. You have to plan it very properly, and importantly you need to have confidence at yourself. That is so these two things I think is a big do. Like doesn't matter how many big business plans you have, how many big Excel sheets you make, but you need to know yourself. What are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, and how you want to go about this. Once you know, you would end up building the right team, right people. You always know that what your goals are, and how you I need to actually kind of even manage your emotional stuff, right? You have to be very calm, subtle, develop your personality and things like that. So I think these are the big two do's for every entrepreneur or every person. I think it's very basic. You need to know who you are as a person. The big don'ts which I would say which I would say is that, like, I think don't have, or don't get carried away in today's world that if that person has done, like, don't ever try to compare yourself. I think there is no possible way where we can compare ourselves with other people, and that is where the biggest problems start. I think even for entrepreneurs, I think even today, I would back then would possibly, or even today, try to compare myself with Steve Jobs, right? I think that is somewhere a good if it gives you a motivation and know that what you need to do. But doing it more and more that okay, I want to build a company, what Apple has done or what Steve Jobs has done, like whatever it is, or what Elon Musk is doing, I think you would end up nowhere because the resources, the situations and everything is totally different. So don't
Mhm.
ever compare yourself with any entrepreneur or any of their journey, right? Just stay focused on everything whatever you have, because ultimately the reality is whatever you have is what you got, and you need to build with things within those resources. There is no point where you complain about things. The other big don'ts is that don't overspend on your product, making it more technically sound. Like I think you should never ever look at getting more and more tech in place if you don't have even in like users. Like one of the biggest mistake which we did with Snapper, I would say, was that I think we built, or we were, I think, lot of ahead of the time or the curve
Hmm.
in a lot of ways. And I think that is also, like in a way would possibly land you up in worst situations, right? I mean, you build a good technology, but eventually the tech or whatever you do would get outdated. Your tech is something which requires a lot of maintenance after you build it. You just cannot say that, okay, I have built something, I don't, kind of upgrade it on a frequent basis. You just have to change when, like operating systems change, or when cloud infrastructure, a lot of things actually change around that. So
Hmm.
build a product, or, don't try to build a product which is like too much complicated. Try to build a very simple prototype or a very simple product which is actually solving a problem and which is actually creating a value. I think you should, go with this. So these are just few basic things which I would like to say.
Okay. But so what is your like most satisfying moment in this whole journey? Can you please tell us about that?
I think there have been a lot of satisfying moments in this whole journey. But I would say that I'm yet not, 100% satisfied. I think there is still a lot potential which, has to be done. Like overall, yes, of course, I've been very grateful, about whatever I have got. But I think I haven't achieved that 100% satisfying things in my entire journey. But what I would say is that like the 100% satisfying thing in my entire journey was that I think I was able to realize that everything happens for your own good. And
Hmm.
there are points when you actually kind of get realize that, I think you feel very satisfied that yeah, matlab, हाँ, जो भी हुआ अपने अच्छे के लिए हुआ, when you start connecting the dots. So
Hmm.
yeah, this is what I would like to say. Yeah.
Okay. So can you please tell us about like what adjective explains your personality or character?
What adjective?
Yes.
I think epic or
Hmm.
legendary,
Mhm.
because I always believed in doing like uh, epic shit, and always wanted to be like kind of legendary in things which I would like to do. So I would say
Mhm.
epic and legendary. Yeah.
Okay, but why think so? Can you please go in detail? Like why you thought that being a legendary or doing epic shit is like why it's suitable for your personality or character? Can you please go in like
Uh,
depth of that?
Actually, because so basically what happened was that like I think when you look at actually I have this habit of reading a lot of this autobiographies and trying to understand the life about a lot of these entrepreneurs in detail, right?
Mhm.
So if you go through and read like Steve Jobs autobiography or Warren Buffett's autobiography, they wanted to be whatever things they did, they just wanted to be legendary in their own way. I mean, Warren Buffett
Mhm.
never wanted to be maybe like, some XYZ person in the Wall Street. He just wanted to be a guy who actually is legendary in his own way. Like he wanted to be the best in things which he did or which he invested, like, so the market would follow it. So
Mhm.
that is, one thing if you, look at, because that guy also in investment world did like a lot of unconventional things. I mean, he started to get into insurance companies. He started to kind of invest into areas. I think he obviously missed out the technology part, but that is a different thing. But he always went and invested like in his own way. This guy actually understood the power of compounding, and he always followed that philosophy in the Wall Street. He was never too greedy like other guys, as say. So he obviously, when he ever had like downfalls or downsides, he always was planned up to kind of invest and buy more. Usually when market falls, nobody would like to buy more, but this guy always did opposite in its own way. And today we know that what kind of a Berkshire Hathaway enterprise he has built with its own bootstrapping and a principle when he realized about compounding, like
Yes.
slowly and steadily.
Mhm.
Other thing, if you even look at like Steve Jobs, right? Like he was legendary he because when he was kicked out of Apple, and he failed to actually like kind of because of a lot of reasons. Obviously everyone has their kind of downsides and things like that. though he was like a multi-millionaire and stuff like that, like other entrepreneurs and stuff like that, he could just have, gone and chill and, kind of relax and everything. But instead, he decided to build more strong product, which was beyond his, capabilities and, capacities. Like, of course, when you compare when Apple was there at a peak and when Steve Jobs again had to, kind of start back next computers, you would see that he was actually, going through a lot of these things, that how he could build a supercomputer for education. And then he had this vision that there'll be desktops, there'll be internet, everything. Like, if you go and understand the technology and the operating system, what Apple knew, I think Steve Jobs knew back then that cloud computing and internet is actually the future. So he built next computers in such a wonderful way that you could actually move your data from one computer to another computer in big institution, colleges and stuff like that, if you understand that technology. And I think that was legendary thinking in his own way. And he did always unconventional stuff. And there was this ad campaign which they actually kind of ran, if you see that, think different. So if you look at, like, all these entrepreneurs, like even people like, you see in boxing, like Mike Tyson, he was like insane. Like he used to do always things and, always end up into troubles and stuff like that. But always came back stronger. You look at, our like dear Tony Stark, or, like Iron Man character, right? I mean, even this guy, if you look at his story, very sad, ended up in jail, and Robert Downey Jr., and then he bounced back. So all of these guys, they actually was legendary in their own thinking, and wanted to do something which they had vision and believe about. So that is the reason I would describe that myself, because because I have my own strength, I have my own energy. When I say that, like, even you would have that own one focus area which you could do better than no one else. Like, you need to know that strength. So that is the reason I would kind of like to describe myself, something like that, in those two adjectives, because I have always done that.
That's great, man. And I believe that you will also going to follow the same path, and will make India like great in terms of like blockchain technology.
Sorry.
So during this journey, like you come across like various self-doubt and people not believing in your ideas. So how you handle adversity and self-doubt during this period? And I also believe that during this conversation, I thought that you also have spiritual aspect in this journey. So do you believe that that also help you to overcome these challenges?
So coming back to your question, like, how actually I would handle adversity and everything.
Yes.
I think it's not at all easy to kind of, handle when, people don't believe in yourself or in you or in your ideas and, everything. And I think in entrepreneur journey, it would actually happen always, all the time. Like, you would be very much entitled to, kind of listen to your inner voice and guts. But people around you would say that this would eventually, not work out, or this is not the right way, and all of that. The best way to actually handle it is, like, in a very simple sense, is that you try to listen to kind of, everyone, think about this very deeply, take important decisions with open mindset, and just trying to, see or look inside you, whether this would really have that huge impact, or what are the combinations or the permutations you need to, look about it, basically, if you have to do it in your own way. So I would always kind of, look at from that perspective, that be the best possible way to handle. Like, you cannot, there's no point in, actually arguing about any of those things, or like, so for example, if your team wants to build certain products or something, I always get into an argument with the tech team if certain thing does not happen, why it's not actually kind of happening, like what is the reason behind it, wo kar sakta hai to hum kyun nahi kar sakte, right? So all of these things is the best possible way to handle, is that you need to listen and pay attention to everything around you, have a deep thought about it, and do it in your own way. If you don't feel something is right, like by your gut or by your value system, it's always okay to say no. It's always okay to kind of take a step back, and kind of realize that, okay, like give it some time, and then do things in a better way. But but the best possible way to handle is that like you actually have to pay attention to everything around you, take some time off, understand, think, and take a very informed decision which you are confident about everything. So this is how I handle all of these situations, because it would keep on happening with you always. Like whenever you grow as a company or as an enterprise or as a business, like it would eventually happen. I think for entrepreneurs, this is something which they have to deal every single day at every single level in their entire journey.
Okay. Okay. So, but sir, what drives you to keep going when it's really tough for you?
I think so. There's this one quote which I actually kind of read. So the quote goes as like follows: "Live a life to create memories and not just die with dreams." So maybe like as a person, or maybe you, me, we just have like a lot of these dreams and desires. Actually, we want to get fulfilled. Like कि मैं ये भी करूँगा, वो भी करूँगा, ऐसा भी होना चाहिए, वैसा भी होना चाहिए. But the only thing is that if you are really crazy about something, you just have to take, risk and look from a perspective, whether you succeed or fail, you just create at the end of the day some memories, because this is what your dreams are. And when you have such, dreams and everything, it's, I think you would fail, but you don't fail unless and until you actually give up and, kind of, quit. You always come back stronger. So this is something which, this quote is always something which always keeps me, drive me, whether if I'm at a social event or I meet friends or anything. I only live my life as if I have to create that memories and create that moment more and more impactful for me and for everyone around me.
Okay. So my last question is that what one advice you will give to the new or experienced but struggling entrepreneurs?
Okay, the most important advice which I would give them is that do your financial planning well. By that, what I mean is that start invest early. In today's world, you can always invest as low as even 1 rupee or 10 rupees or 15 rupees, 50 rupees or 100 or whatever money you have. So there are a lot of these apps available where you can actually invest. You need to start investing early, because if you're struggling, most of the entrepreneurs actually struggle a lot of through things like through financial, stuff or financial things, I would say. So when you start investing early and over the years, you would actually see that compounding effect, which would actually happen. What made Warren Buffett as an investor or an entrepreneur is that, so if you look, Warren Buffett accepts that I'm the most laziest guy in the world because I would always put my money to work. And if my money, the way I do it is like my money works for me 24/7. If you look at the structure, how Berkshire Hathaway operates today, they just have 25 to 30 people, and they are a company worth over like 500, $600 billion, owning some of the best companies in the world. I think if you look at a company of the similar size, you look at how many employees they have, how many processes they have, right? I mean, insane. Like they would be like 50,000, 100,000, 150,000 people. But the different thing about Warren Buffett was that rather than he actually kind of, spending it and, doing it all of that away, he actually had a lot of these patience in himself, started to invest early, started to put his money to work early. And that's how he became, eventually successful. And I think that is the most important advice I would like to give to every entrepreneur, that in whatever situation you are, right, it does not take an effort to save $10, but if you do it like for 100 days, you end up saving 1,000. And plus the compounding effect which you eventually get after that end of that year or something like that. And I think managing that aspect in my life, where I always kept on investing into things which I always liked or loved, I think has helped me a lot as an entrepreneur.
So that means never underestimate the power of compounding.
Yeah, absolutely, never ever.
Okay, so my last question is that how do you feel about this interview?
I think this is like a really good interview, actually. I had, and I had a really fun time actually sharing my journey. And also, when I spoke about all of these things, I actually kind of, went a step back, analyzed everything, whatever has happened. Maybe I got a lot of those vibes where I actually succeeded, and also I would have failed, and potentially other things that I would do in much better way. So
Mhm.
I think it's always good to go into your past and check and think about this ki matlab kaise hua kya hua, and I think it was really very good. I really had a good time doing this.
Yes, yes. So I also believe that like if you are motivating someone, you also get motivated, and you will
Yeah,
work.
correct.
Yeah. So and you will work on your idea with more focused mind, and you can. So
Absolutely, you're right.
yeah, thank you so much, sir, for this interview, and it's a very inspiring and thought provoking, I would say, because the like the suggestions you gave to the young entrepreneurs, that's really much needed for today's entrepreneurs, because more and more people are like running towards valuation but not for the profitability. So
Right.
that's really great. So I'm thankful for you for this episode.
Definitely, Saurabh.
Sure,
Looking forward to it. Thank you so
sure,
much,
sure.
man. And
Yeah.
cheers. So, if any entrepreneurs they want to kind of reach out to me and have a chat with me, I'm always available on LinkedIn as like Prashant Surana Jain. You can also drop me an email on like Prashant Prashant dot like Surana Surana @snapperfuturetech.com. You can look me up on Instagram as Bitcoin Man India, on Twitter, everywhere, and I would be happy to chat and properly invest or whatever is required for doing some really epic shit together.
Yeah, sure. So for all the listeners, I will mention all the handles of Prashant sir in the comment box, as well as in the description. So you can go there and check how like motivated this person is and how they are transforming India with the help of blockchain. So please do check out.
Yeah, thank you so much,
Thank you.
Saurav, and thank you so much. Yeah,
Thank
looking
you.
forward to it again. Cheers.